By now we've all heard the words or seen the memes that the Boruto generation is way too overpowered, or that the power scaling makes no sense, and now that Boruto Part 1 has now finally wrapped up and Boruto's time skip is here in the form of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, I want to take some time to look back at the Boruto generation and look at just how strong each of the members of the generation are and explain to you why it's not as bad as a lot of people think it is in this newest installment of the Strongest in Naruto, where we take a look at some of the strongest individual characters as well as strongest groups in the series, and we break down exactly what it is and makes them so deadly. And for Boruto's generation, it is very top heavy. Like I did in my other videos in the series, we're going to follow a very similar format. It's going to be a brief overview, a threat assessment, then we're going to look at their individual skill and power so we can form an objective conclusion on the topic at hand. So just how big of a task would it be to take on every member of Boruto's generation all at once, which for this video we're only going to limit it to Konoha generation, since there isn't much known about the kids from the other villages. We're also going to exclude Himawari merely because it's unknown as of this video if she's going to choose to become a shinobi or if she's going to go into general studies after she finishes the academy. So let's just assume that we've hopped into the lab and we create our custom shinobi and they've just pulled up on Boruto's generation at the Konoha training grounds. How hard would it be to shut down the collective of Boruto's generation? Well, it's surprisingly harder than you think, especially when you compare the Boruto 14 to the Konoha 12. Out of the 14 Boruto era shinobi, only 3 of them have 3 changes in chakra nature. Those 3 are Boruto, who has wind release, water release, and lightning release; Sarada, who has wind release, fire release, and lightning release; and then you have Mirai Sarutobi, the daughter of Asuma and the student of Shikamaru, who has wind release, fire release, and lightning release. The only other person outside of these 3 who possesses multiple changes in chakra nature is Mitsuki, who has wind release and lightning release. Now, out of the remaining shinobi, 7 of them have at least 1 change in chakra nature, with a couple of these shinobi that have access to the change in chakra nature but they haven't mastered it. Shikadai has wind release, Sumire and Namida have water release, Chocho and Denki have lightning release, though it should be worth noting that Chocho's lightning release is only in her manga profile and we've yet to see her use it in combat in the anime or manga. Iwabe has earth release and Kawaki has fire release. That leaves Inojin, Wasabi, and Metal Lee as the only members of their generation who don't have a change in chakra nature yet. But to their defense, as Naruto's manga established in chapter 316 and chapter 317, Genin are not expected to know a change in chakra nature, and it isn't expected for you to have multiple change in chakra natures until you become a Jonin, which should make you look at Mirai, Mitsuki, Boruto, and Sarada a lot differently now. However, those remaining 3, they're not exactly pushovers. Metal Lee can open up the first of the inner gates, which is a really noticeable boost in power, but it is small when compared to the other inner gates that he's yet to have mastered. Inojin also knows the hidden jutsu of the Yamanaka clan, and he knows how to use Sai's jutsu, the Super Beast Scroll. Wasabi is also in possession of a hidden jutsu that's taught to members of her clan, which is that cat possession, which gives her what I refer to as being a cat-like shaped Susanoo. That's basically a cat chakra armor. Inko also has a hidden jutsu in the form of a cursed transformation that she can utilize that gives her a stat boost, though based off what we've seen, it isn't anything really to write home about. Hoki is a very talented shinobi who caught the attention of Kakashi Hatake and is being directly trained by Sai, working with Sai under the Anbu. Hoki has a photographic memory as well as an extreme mastery of earth release, like that impressive earth release jutsu that he produced in the tuning exams of Boruto that rivaled the size what you saw some of the Sound 4 do, which is really impressive for Genin, since the Sound 4 are scaling right under special Jonin. So directly under people like Genma, maybe slightly stronger than Genma, but under people like, say, Asuma. But then you got people like Tsubaki, who comes from the land of iron, and she also was trained by Mifune and is considered to be Mifune's successor and is learning the same jutsu that you saw Mifune use during the 4th Ninja War. Though she's still working to complete some of them, she shows incredible progress when it comes to her combat ability. Chocho, despite all the memes, is another one who is possession of a hidden jutsu passed down by her parents, in this case the Akimichi clan's partial expansion jutsu and the butterfly mode, which both make her a very formidable enemy. However, it's not just chakra natures and hidden jutsu that you have to worry about. The top members of this generation, i.e. Team 7, they each have something that makes them a monster to deal with individually, especially when you consider somebody like Hoki, who is in possession of Earth Release and has that photographic memory. So Sarada, Boruto, and Kawaki are the only people in this generation who have a Kage Genkai. Hers being the Sharingan, Boruto possessing the Jogan, and Kawaki possesses Ishiki Otsuki's Dojutsu powers. Sarada's Sharingan comes with the basic Sharingan powers like the Eye of Insight, predicting moves and copying jutsu, and the Eye of Hypnotism, performing advanced Sharingan Genjutsu. Boruto's Jogan lets him see dimensional rifts, and it gives him a boost in his power stats. Kawaki, when using Ishiki's Dojutsu, can shrink objects and summon objects from his chakra dimension, as well as shrink himself down to 1 inch in size. Then you have Mitsuki, who can access Sage Mode, but that power comes at a cost of his body breaking down if he uses it for too long. Then you have Boruto and Kawaki, who possess Karma, which allows him to absorb all ninjutsu based attacks, with the exception of chakra based attacks that use naturally existing elements like water release made from water from a lake, or fire release that uses naturally existing fire. Karma also gives the user a stat boost, and its full mastery allows for all the powers of the Otsuki, who bestowed upon them the Karma Seal, which also includes their Kage Genkai. Finally, you have two people in this generation who utilize Ninja Tech. Denki has a Ninja Tech bodysuit armor that gives him a massive boost in speed, his reflexes, and his power. Kawaki's whole body is walking Ninja Tech because Amato's nanotech runs through Kawaki's body and allows him to make melee weapons. What you should be seeing right here is that Boruto's generation is rather top heavy. But let's dive into each of the members of Boruto's generation respectively, so you can see how surprisingly strong some of them are and how overrated some of them might be. But as a collective, this generation is diverse enough that our custom created character is going to have his hands full before they even reach Boruto or Kawaki, who we're going to save for last due to how karma works. Starting things off with Mitsuki, the son of Orochimaru, more than lives up to expectations that come from having a father who is viewed as both being a Kage killer and as one of the legendary Sannin, a trio who collectively equal the 5 Kage. Mitsuki is exceptionally talented for his age, and he's clearly a genius. Just the fact that he's able to use Sage Mode is a sign that Mitsuki has enormous chakra levels, because to even attempt Sage Mode training, you have to have high chakra reserves as a requirement. Like Orochimaru, he's able to use the body modification jutsu to stretch his limbs out to attack from a distance, or ensnare his enemy in a chokehold, or grab hold of them. He's also immune to most known poisons, and his body was genetically created by Orochimaru to quickly adjust and build immunity to whatever new poisons he hasn't been introduced to, which we saw in the battle with Boro. He's able to use Orochimaru's striking shadow snakes to attack from a distance, and on top of being skilled in taijutsu, he's just as sneakily deceptive as Orochimaru, because Mitsuki in episode 15 was shooting out needles from his mouth like he was a New Yorker in the 90s that spit out that razor blade from the mouth to cut somebody. He can also use his snakes to communicate with them and gather intel. Boruto episode 6 showed us that he does have some sensory ability without being in Sage Mode, as we saw during the graduation test with Kakashi. Mitsuki also used a sealing jutsu that is strong enough to briefly hold down someone as strong as Kakashi. When he does enter into Sage Mode, depending on which translation you use, Orochimaru states that Mitsuki is either stronger than he currently is in Boruto or has the potential to be stronger than him. However, his Sage Mode is no joke at all, regardless which translation you use. His chakra snakes surround his body and can lash out at his enemy. His overall speed increases to a level that he blitzed Orochimaru in log, and his power was enough that at full Sage Mode blast was strong enough to bring Deepa down to his knees, which speaks volumes to the strength level of his great lightning snake jutsu that he used on Deepa. The basic snake lightning allows him to shoot off a snake-shaped form of lightning that can strike his enemy, but it's not even his strongest lightning release jutsu. In the manga, Mitsuki also knows purple lightning, which he used against Owl in the manga version of the fight. Purple lightning being Kakashi's lightning release jutsu that he created after the war because he felt incapable of protecting Konoha without the Sharingan and the ability to safely perform the Raikiri, which I covered in a whole video explaining behind why Kakashi almost didn't become Hokage. Now, when Mitsuki uses his body modification jutsu, he can do things like the Shadow Snake Burial Jutsu, which lets him send his arms underground to pop up behind the enemy and drag them into the ground, or he can fling them into the air depending on how the jutsu is used. In the battle against Boro, we saw that he can actually summon giant snakes as a part of his arms to attack his enemy. He's able to also perform jutsu like the Gale Palm Jutsu, which shoots off a blast of wind release at the enemy, and the wind release immense breakthrough jutsu shoots off a gust of wind release that is shot out the mouth that shoots out an entire wind vortex at the enemy. On top of that, Mitsuki is able to split his chakra evenly and perform the shadow clone jutsu, which makes him one of the few members of this group who can use the shadow possession jutsu. Now, Metal Lee is another dangerous shinobi. While he doesn't have fancy ninjutsu like all the others or changes in chakra nature, Metal Lee is just a good old-fashioned brawler who is ready to throw hands with whoever, whenever, however, so long as his problem with his nerves isn't brought up, because if it is, his performance anxiety gets the better of him. However, the downside to this is that if his performance anxiety gets too bad, it actually becomes a bit of a gag power-up, just like his father's drunken fist fighting style, because of how unpredictable his movements get. Metal Lee becomes a problem when it comes to fighting in that respect. According to the Boruto movie novel, when it comes to taijutsu, Metal Lee is not only considered a genius, but he's considered to be the genius of taijutsu for his generation, which, given who his father is, it makes a lot of sense. During the Chunin exams, he was holding his own against Shinki, the adopted son of Gar, who was strong enough to fight off against Boruto and Sarada together. He's got a leg up on his father in the sense that Metal Lee can actually perform ninjutsu, because we see him use sealing jutsu with his other classmates when they fight against Kakashi in the bell test. The fact that we don't see him learning ninjutsu likely comes down to the fact that he's willingly following his father's footsteps to focus only on taijutsu and master the inner gates, but being able to perform ninjutsu opens up the door for him to go the route of Might Guy, who technically could use ninjutsu. He just relied on physical strength and didn't waste time using chakra for jutsu when he could just use that chakra to amp up his physical stats. Metal Lee is able to open up the first of the inner gates, which is absolutely huge. Normally, a human can only use 20% of their body's power, but with the inner gates, Metal Lee can boost up even more of his power with each of the inner gates he is able to unlock over time. Currently, he can only use the first inner gate, which isn't anything to snooze at if he only stays at inner gate number 1, because that means he's only gotten as far as Kakashi in terms of learning the inner gates, which that's not bad company to be in. As Kakashi and Might Guy stated in Naruto's manga, learning the inner gates is extremely difficult, which is why Kakashi was shocked to learn that a 13-year-old Rock Lee could open up 5 of the inner gates while Kakashi was still stuck at the first inner gate. Using the first inner gate, the gate of opening, is a big deal. This gate removes the mental walls that a person might have in their brain, and it allows them to tap into a substantial boost of power, and as a result, it allows them to use the front lotus, though doing so will leave the user exhausted if they use the front lotus. This is the jutsu you saw Rock Lee use against Gar, where he kicked him into the air and he jumped up in the air behind him. He wrapped those bandages around him, he spun around in the air and slammed him into the ground as hard as he could. However, even if Metal Lee doesn't use his power all top in the fight, he's still a practitioner of the strong fist fighting style, which is a fighting style that places extreme emphasis on literally breaking the bones of the person that they're fighting. And this form of fighting isn't for the weak either, because even someone like Sasuke struggled with fighting using this fighting style for an extended period of time, because you're basically pushing your body's maximum output of damage in one hit repeatedly, and the same when it comes to using that speed. Similar to how Tsunade and Sakura's chakra enhanced punches work, but you're doing it repeatedly and with speed to shatter bones upon impact. However, as shown by Sasuke's training, the amount of time you can fight with this fighting style can go up continuously, can go up if you continuously train using this style, like we saw when he fought against Gar, and obviously like we see when Rock Lee and Might Guy are fighting in part 2 of Naruto. Sumire is the daughter of one of Danzo's former root shinobi. Despite her meek appearance, Sumire is, as far back as the academy, is well above the skill of a genin when you look at her. But in the academy, she was strong enough to earn praise from Chunin, who were chasing after her. Sai was able to take her out in one hit, albeit it was a blindside attack, but even if she braced for it, it wouldn't have mattered. The girl is very skilled. Her battle with Mitsuki quickly showed how she can adjust in combat against her enemy, even if they're stronger than her, and as we saw before the first Chunin exams, her observation skills are deceptively good, because she broke down the strengths and weaknesses of Team 7 very quickly while she spoke to the other members of her team in the anime. She has the ability to summon Nue, the creature created by its root organization that uses Hashirama cells. At first, Sumire needed to rely only on the seal on her back to use Nue, and once the seal was destroyed, Sumire formed a contract with Nue, and as Sumire's grown stronger, the appearance of Nue changes as well, going from that chibi form to being the size of a large tiger by the time that Sumire fights against a fatigued Kawaki in the anime, which means as she grows stronger, the chances of Nue taking on its full appearance and size are going to go up, and it's going to be as big as the Nue was that Kakashi fought against. Its powers are a clear reflection of the Hashirama cells that Danzo harvested for its creation. Because Nue is able to absorb the chakra of a target, it also has the same regen abilities that we've seen those who have wood release have limited access to, with Nue being able to regrow limbs. It's strong enough that Kakashi's purple lightning wasn't able to kill it. If we really want to be disingenuous, however, I will say regardless as to how much chakra is in that purple lightning, is still a very impressive thing. Now, Sumire only has water release, but she's mastered the usage of it to a high degree. She's able to make water release cones to use as a diversion. She can shoot off water bullets in a rapid manner at her enemy, and she's able to make walls of water for defensive purposes. Her strongest water release attack is her water style spirit wave attack, which sees her place both of her hands together like she's holding a gun that has a considerable amount of recoil, and she concentrates a giant ball of water release in the form of a changing chakra shape that begins to swirl around. And once this is done, she can fire out that giant ball of water, or she can use it like a semi-automatic rifle and shoot off multiple bullets at her target in rapid succession. Though in the Boruto Academy novel, she used the attack, and when she did this, it tired her out briefly. Shikadai isn't the physically strongest out of this generation, but he's one of the problems you got to deal with. The kid is a genius. He's inherited his wind release from his mother Tamari, whose wind release was second to only Naruto in the Shinobi Alliance. Both of his parents, Shikamaru and Tamari, they're geniuses, and he appeared to have inherited their high aptitude for perception, analysis, and with strategy. According to the Boruto movie data book, he's seen as the genius of the current generation of the entire Nara clan, and in the Garhida novel, it was revealed due to Shikadai being Tamari's child, he possessed the potential to have the gene for Magna release, though it hasn't been determined yet in Boruto because he only has wind release. However, if he gains earth release, there's a possibility he's going to learn to gain access to the Magna release because he's got that Keke Genkai. However, let's look at what we do know here. His wind release has every bit of potential to surpass his mother's, because in the battle against Toneri's puppets in the time slip arc against Urashiki, Shikadai performed the wind style sea dragon jutsu using Tamari's fan and was able to inflict a good amount of damage on those puppets. The very same puppets we saw firsthand in Naruto the Last aren't necessarily fragile, but the trade-off is that when he uses this jutsu, it takes a whole lot out of him, because his chakra reserves, while they were high enough to perform the jutsu, they aren't high enough to use repeated use until he trains to raise those chakra levels. When fighting alongside Inojin and Chocho, they can use their clan's hidden jutsu, which would be the Inashikacho jutsu, which are a set of 5 cooperation ninjutsu that the clan passes down. Those would be jutsu like the human bullet yo-yo, where the Akimichi of the group beefs up their size by going into a human boulder. The Nara clan member links their shadows together using shadow possession, and then the Yamanaka clan member is able to send the locations of the enemy to the Nara clan member telepathically so they can direct the attack of the human boulder. On top of that, we know from the Boruto movie novel that with the help of Tamari and Shikamaru, Shikadai was able to create an improved shadow possession jutsu that expands the field of the jutsu in a circle, specifically to catch someone like Boruto who uses shadow clones. The movie novel makes it clear that while Tamari was the one who suggested and tweaking the jutsu in this manner, that we see instead of using multiple extensions for one, but instead apply the change in chakra shape to jutsu to expand it like a giant fishnet, which is absolutely ingenious. This is one of the biggest benefits that Shikadai gains from having 2 geniuses as parents. Between the 3 of them, the future improvements to his shadow possession jutsu are going to be absolutely insane, which is a reminder, it's not a Keke Genkai. Anybody can learn this jutsu. It is a hidden jutsu passed down between the clan. Now, speaking of his intelligence, the anime and the manga don't do enough justice to show how big-brained Shikadai is. In the Boruto movie novel, Shikadai openly boasts during his fight with Boruto that he isn't worried about the Rasengan because he's come up with 12 different ways to counter Boruto's Rasengan to limit the effectiveness of it in their fight, which is pretty scary to think about. Shikadai is indeed skilled, but he still has a ways to go in mastering the hidden jutsu of his clan. At the same age, Shikamaru was able to use the Shadow Stitching Jutsu, a jutsu that Shikadai cannot use right now. But to his defense, he does have the Shadow Strangle Jutsu, which can bind a target, choke out a target, or even snap their neck. And he did make an entirely new Shadow Possession Jutsu with Tamari's help, that circular jutsu used to capture Boruto's shadow clones. So while there is some room for growth, the fact that he's learning changing chakra nature and directly asked Tamari to help him work on wind release means that in the future he's going to be a problem. Now, Inojin is also skilled, even though I don't like the kid, but while he's not the strongest person that you have to worry about, his sensory skills, they are growing, and they're growing at a pretty decent rate. He still has issues with those sensory sensory skills, so as we've seen in progress. However, the combination of inheriting Ino's aptitude for sensory skills and combining it with Sai's Super Beast Scroll Jutsu, which allows him to draw ink birds to fly into on the battlefield or fly on top of, which combined with his sensory skills makes Inojin a great support ninja to have in battle, especially if he's flying in the air using the Yamanaka clan's telepathic jutsu to communicate with his comrades, which means if that guy's in the air, you have nowhere you can hide. He also has shown great improvement with his ability to use the mind transfer jutsu, with him being able to briefly suppress his mother's rage when she was arguing with Sai in the anime, which paid off the handful of anime canon episodes where he struggled with the jutsu. While most of his jutsu are best used in a support role, he does have some jutsu like the Super Beast Scroll that can be used to be fighting from a distance. That being said, calling him the weakest member of his team, it isn't a stretch, especially when you realize how people severely underrate Chocho, and neither is it a stretch to say that Inojin is best used in a support role, because as his fight against Hoki in the tuning exams proved, in order to fully maximize his talent, he needs to be a support ninja. Now, here's the thing about Chocho. She's stronger and more skilled than she's given credit for. She can be annoying, absolutely. Does she have training episodes that were a pain in the rear to watch as a fan? Absolutely. However, what you feel about the character has nothing to do with the reality of the character. The reality of Chocho is that we're watching her do stuff that her own father couldn't do until the war arc of Naruto's manga. In Naruto's manga, Choji was not able to fully access his butterfly mode without the assistance of those chakra pills until we got to Naruto's war arc. But due to this era of relative peace, Chocho has been trained up to a point where she's using butterfly mode effectively without having to use those pills that Choji did. In earlier episodes, she wasn't able to maintain the slim form and use that power at the same time because she had a stat decrease, but by the time we got to the episode where she and Anko are protecting a case of bean jam from bandits, she ended up keeping the slim form and using her full power for her attacks, and by the time she fights Sarada in the tuning exams, we see that she's able to combine the full power and keep that slender mode without having any issues. Now, the butterfly mode is absolutely nasty. Full power being utilized by that slimmed down form gives you a 100 times increase over your base power, as stated by Naruto's manga. She also has the Akimichi clan's expansion jutsu, which lets her dish out more powerful strikes. While using this power, she can perform jutsu like the hollow boom, which she first used in the first tuning exams, where she smashes the ground so hard that debris flies up in the air and she swings her fist at the debris in order to launch at her enemy, which lets her fight from a distance and create diversions. However, like Shikadai and Inojin, Chocho has not mastered all of the jutsu in her clan, and while she's mastered things her father couldn't do unassisted until the war, she hasn't mastered all the jutsu of her clan, which means she still has quite a bit of ways to go. Now, this brings us to Sarada Uchiha, the daughter of Sasuke and Sakura. As we previously discussed, she's got the Sharingan, so things like reading movements, predicting movements, copying ninjutsu, and advanced Sharingan genjutsu, they're all at her disposal. However, when we consider the anime and manga, she's racked up quite the arsenal that should make you look at Sasuke telling her that she surpassed him when he was her age at the age of 13. It should make you look at it a lot closer now. In the manga, Sarada has her 3-tomo Sharingan that she got in the Sasuke Shinden the Teacher Star Pupil novel, which means that her base Sharingan in the manga is fully matured. Out of all the members of Boruto's generation who don't have Karma or don't have Sage Mode, she's your most dangerous one, and it's been quite a bit of a build-up when you consider the source materials. In the Boruto movie novelization written by Ukyo Kodachi, Boruto and Sarada were already being scaled as being stronger than entry-level Jonin, which, to give you a reference, is really impressive when you consider what the Boruto movie was saying about their skill level during the tuning exams. Remember the Sound 4 from Part 1 Naruto. Remember how strong they are. They needed to use curse mark transformations and a numbers advantage to take down 2 special Jonin who were exhausted from coming back from a mission. Now, despite the title, special Jonin are ranked lower than standard Jonin. Sarada and Boruto's power during the tuning exams in the Momoshiki arc wasn't compared to special Jonin. Their striking power and speed was compared to Jonin, and it wasn't in reference to skill, it was in specific reference to their striking power and speed, which should make a lot of sense. Boruto and Sarada, they weren't too far apart in terms of power in the academy, and Boruto was stated by Kakashi during the academy arc to already be above Chunin level. Them being compared to Jonin by the narrator at that point in time makes a lot of sense. By the events of the Vessel arc, she was able to briefly pressure Ao who was considered to be an elite Jonin from the Mist Village and was strong to hold his own against one of the two strongest root ninja that Danzo had, and Al had been enhanced with ninja tech by the time he fought Sarada, which means he was stronger than he was when he was fighting in the 5 Kage Summit. There's a reason why the Road to Be, the one-shot chapter that came out before Boruto the movie, referenced Sarada as being an elite of her generation. However, let's dive a little bit deeper here. Sarada's chakra enhanced punches, they've only gotten stronger now because she's used her Sharingan to copy Sakura's movements in order to mimic her chakra enhanced attacks. In Boruto episode 175, Sarada's chakra enhanced punches, while they are slow, they pack enough of a punch that they're leaving noticeable cracks on Deepa's chakra armor. For reference, Mitsuki's fully powered Sage Lightning Mode attack, it was not strong enough to crack Deepa's armor, and neither could Shinki's maxed out Iron Sand attacks. The only thing being shown to have that striking force powerful enough to crack Deepa's armor was Boruto's Compression Rasengan, and that was before Deepa was using his carbon armor, which makes you look at what Sarada did that much more impressive. Fully powered chakra enhanced punches from Sarada, they're nothing to sniff at, especially once she's able to combine those chakra enhanced punches with the speed that she uses for her Chidori. At that point, it's lights out. Now that brings me to a jutsu that we all know all too well, the Chidori. The Chidori was a failed result of adding lightning release to the Rasengan, but due to the high speed at which the user is traveling, in order to use that thrusting jab of the Chidori, it can only be safely performed while the user has a Sharingan due to the tunnel vision that it gives the user and the straight line manner in which the thrusting jab is used. It's got drawbacks that leave the user wide open to a counterattack. There was enough speed increase here that in the manga, Sarada was able to attack Boro without the help of Team 7, which is something that is anime only. In the manga, she's moving so fast that Boro can't even weave the hand signs for his jutsu to move his core in order to avoid the strike. While that is her strongest jutsu in her arsenal, her other lightning release jutsu, like the lightning orb jutsu that she has, is great for long range, and when she first copied Bunsen's lightning release jutsu, Sarada was also able to use the lightning chakra armor to amp up her attacks and add an extra layer of defense to them. So even without the Chidori speed amp, she's got that in her back pocket as well. Whatever jutsu you use against Sarada, as long as it's not a Kekkei Genkai, she can and she will copy it, and she will use it against you. Her jutsu are her jutsu, and your jutsu are our jutsu as far as Sarada's concerned. That Sharingan means that she's married to your ninjutsu arsenal. This is obviously assuming, of course, that Sarada has mastered the change in chakra nature for the jutsu that you're using, which is a reminder, Sharingan cannot copy a change in chakra nature jutsu that the user doesn't have a mastery for. So for instance, if you use water release, Sarada can't copy it since Sarada doesn't know water release. However, the main drawback to Sarada is that, like Izumi Uchiha from the Itachi Book of Daylight novel, using the Sharingan does tax her body as a half Uchiha. It's something that Sarada herself has said during the tuning exams, that her stamina drains really quickly when she uses the Sharingan, and during the Kara actuation arc when she trains with Sasuke and Sakura, Sakura flat out says it again, that her stamina issues will prevent her from mastering her Sharingan, which is why she needs to pay more attention to her chakra control, i.e. basically go the Kakashi route. This is why during the Boro battle in the manga, if you pay very close attention, Sarada is cutting her Sharingan on and off just long enough to study Boro's moves, and then she cuts it off to save her chakra. And then when she dumps an enormous amount of chakra into the Chidori and dumps another amount of chakra into her speed, Sarada is shown struggling to keep one of her eyes open in the manga, and immediately after destroying Boro's core, she cuts off her Sharingan despite seeing that Boro was about to go into his rampage. It goes back to chakra and stamina. Your only saving grace against the current version of Sarada is going to be her stamina. While it's a lot higher than it was when it started out the series, right now it still is an Achilles heel for her. Sarada is also one of the few people in her generation who can use shadow clones, but she also has a very strong fire style change in chakra nature due to being an Uchiha. This means jutsu like the fireball Phoenix Flower jutsu that can shoot off multiple fireballs in rapid succession, they're at her disposal, and due to her high skill in shuriken jutsu, she's able to do what Itachi did against Naruto and combine that with her shuriken jutsu. Now what's even more interesting is the fact that in Boruto Naruto Next Generations chapter 80, Sarada has awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. While we don't know what her powers are, just getting the Mangekyo Sharingan in of itself is a major amp in power, so that's something to factor in. Now, Mirai Sarutobi is another one of high skill. According to the Shikamaru Shinden Morning Clouds novel and the Konoha Shinden Steam Ninja Scrolls novel, as well as the manga adaptation of that story, before Boruto's class entered into the academy in that novel, she was considered to be the genius of her generation. Again, this is before Boruto and them went into the academy, with Shikamaru stating that she mastered every jutsu that he taught her in a record amount of time, to the point where she was reminding him of her grandfather, the man who was given the nickname the Professor because he knew every non-Kekkei Genkai jutsu in Konoha. There's a reason she's the main bodyguard for Kakashi and Naruto. While she isn't anywhere near as strong as them, she does have a rapidly improving skill set and high potential. Both of her parents, despite the memes, were considered to be two of Konoha's strongest jonin when they were alive. They just made the mistake of fighting S-rank shinobi with some of the most broken abilities in the series, but that does not make them weak. Mirai's genjutsu has already reached a point where she's rivaling her mother's genjutsu, despite her being younger than Kurenai was when Kurenai was a jonin. Mirai is only 14 years old by the events of the time slip arc when Urashiki defeated her, whereas Kurenai was almost 30 years old when she fought against Itachi. With the exception of Sasuke, Mirai has been called the strongest genjutsu user amongst the active Konoha shinobi. Reminder, Sasuke is still on probation in Boruto and Kakashi is retired, so Kakashi does not count. Her combat skill can be directly scaled to Shojoji, who Boruto fought in the Mujina Bandits arc, because Shikamaru in that Shikamaru Shinden Morning Clouds, Shikamaru directly scaled Mirai Sarutobi to Shojoji, saying that she was strong to take him down in battle, which means by the events of that arc, she's closed the gap between herself and Boruto considerably. Goes back to what Shikamaru said, she's rapidly improving. Mirai, according to that same novel, mastered most of Asuma's ninjutsu arsenal, which includes things like the Flint Yagura Jutsu, which sends up that whirlwind of fire, and his fighting style with Asuma using the chakra blades, and while directly training under Shikamaru as her sensei and Naruto as a Hokage, who she guards and runs training exercises with, she's created the whirlwind fist. Now, this jutsu is dangerous. It is very dangerous. She compresses an entire typhoon of wind release all the way down. She wraps it around her hand. The compressed spinning typhoon of chakra is then slammed into the body of whoever it is she strikes, and the attack produces a shockwave as a result that blows them away. As a reminder, when you compress down high amounts of chakra, you get things like the Rasengan. According to the novel where she debuted it, before you saw it being used in the anime, Mirai created this jutsu on a mere whim when she was training with Temari and Shikamaru, and when she saw Temari use the Wind Scythe jutsu, and then when she saw the Rasengan, she decided to make her own jutsu that combined both elements of those jutsu. Ladies and gentlemen, that is nothing short of a genius at work, which now it should start making sense as to why Shikamaru said that she had a level of talent that reminded him of what they said about the third Hokage. That's not to say she's going to be as strong as the third Hokage. What that is saying, though, is that she has potential to surpass her father and potential to reach where the third Hokage got to in skill. Now, Genki is a little bit easy and straightforward to deal with. Physically, he's grown stronger, but there's a reason why he needed to make a ninja tech suit of armor and basically become the Iron Man of his generation. He needed to stay relevant with some of his classmates, even though he's gotten strong enough that in the Funato arc he can carry grown men around, and his skill with lightning release has increased beyond just using it to amp up his speed and use a few short lightning release attacks. The fact that Denki was able to fight out Kyoho in the anime shows that he's gotten stronger, but he is one of the weaker members of his generation, but he's in a very sneaky way catching up to some of his peers. Now, Iwabe was a standout at the academy with his hand-to-hand combat and fighting skills. The only reason he was held back at the academy for 2 years is the boy is just stupid when it comes to academics. He suffers from being born in the wrong era. In the academy, he was easily holding off Boruto when they first fought, and though we've seen Boruto gap Iwabe in power by a wide margin up to this point, the fact that during the tuning exams post Ishiki he was able to make an Earth Release jutsu that went higher than the arena itself speaks volumes to his increased chakra reserves. And in the Funato clan arc, we see his ability to use hand seals has gone up, because in episode 249, despite having his hands tied, he's making one-handed hand seals, something we've never seen him do before. Now, while it's not as impressive as using one-handed hand seals, which is a sign of a very elite shinobi, it's still very impressive nonetheless, nonetheless and shows that Iwabe is growing in skill. Anytime your skill in Earth Release makes Kakashi praise you, you're absolutely doing something right. He can use Earth Release to make melee weapons, or he can use it to wrap it around his target like he did against Amato when Amato first came into the village. While his combat skills are better suited for close range, he's got a growing long range arsenal as well with Earth Release, and his chakra reserves are growing. The only thing left is to beef up that brain a bit more, because he still has moments where he makes Part 1 Naruto look like an absolute genius. Now, Wasabe's main benefit is that her family's hidden jutsu that's been passed down from generation to generation in that scroll about the cat god, which gives her that chakra armor avatar of that cat. It boosts up her speed and power, and the avatar can use taijutsu attacks. Her cat cloak jutsu gives her a considerable boost in speed that comes in handy for, as she likes to use her agility when fighting against people or try catching them off guard. In the later days of the academy, she was considered to be the second fastest person in the academy, but as we all know, every member of Team 7 runs laps around her right now. Now, Namida is another one that isn't physically strong, but she has a hidden jutsu that can be a problem. Her calling on tears jutsu is used when she builds chakra up in her throat and releases it in sound waves that knock out whoever it is that she targets with it. Through her chakra control training with Hanabi, she's able to increase the amount of power of the attack without harming her allies, but the trade-off is that it takes a considerable amount of her stamina when it's used. Her water release change in chakra nature is sneaky strong too, despite her chakra reserves being average. She only knows the water wave jutsu, which allows her to shoot out a massive waterfall of her water at her enemy, and with the chakra control, she can adjust the amount of water created by the chakra and the direction of it. Again, this is another shinobi being carried by the top heavy members of her generation. Now, Hoki is another member of the generation who's grown more powerful as the time's gone by. When you meet him in the academy, he's nothing special. Neither are the members of his team, but by training with Sai and going on extensive Anbu Black Ops missions, this kid has had a glow up, and in his battle in the tuning exams against Inojin is proof. He's the walking embodiment of a ninja must see past deception, sacrificing an enormous amount of his chakra to make a giant Earth Release maze, and using his photographic memory to memorize every detail of the maze, including Inojin's location, and making a strategy to outright defeat Inojin when Inojin least expected it. This kid doesn't know a lot of jutsu, but the ones he do know, they fit very well into his battle fighting style, and he's showing IQ levels to make you realize that you can't take him or his photographic memory lightly. And for a bit of a comparison, the size of that Earth Release jutsu, you gotta go back to something that the Sound 4 did in Part 1 of Naruto in order to get a comparison. Now, let's say you managed to take down all of these shinobi. Now you have Boruto and Kawaki who are just sitting in the background. They're eating the Thunder Burgers, watching you take care of all their light work. Well, with Boruto, you got your hands full before you even get the Karma Seal Power Amp. Water Release is his weakest change in chakra nature, but we see him use it in the battle against Ao, summon a giant wave of water that floods the entire area, despite the fact that there is no water nearby, which, as a reminder, making Water Release that big without a nearby body of water is a really huge deal. As we learned in Part 1 Naruto, when Tobirama as an Edo Tensei not at full power was able to summon a giant flood of water against Hiruzen. Boruto from a young age was trained in the gentle fist fighting style by Hinata and Hanabi, though due to not having a Byakugan, he can't target your chakra points. He's shown the creativity in his chakra natures and his shadow clones to create jutsu like the Boruto Stream that uses shadow clones in conjunction with its wind release, and he uses a Rasengan or lightning release to dish out more damage from the clones, propelling him forward with a speed boost by that lightning release. He's got multiple versions of the Rasengan that he can use. The basic Rasengan compresses chakra in a spiraling motion and applies the max change in chakra shape, which makes the Rasengan so deadly. If he adds lightning release to the Rasengan, he can use the vanishing Rasengan, which you won't be able to see coming without a Sharingan or ninja tech like we saw with Sasuke and Deepa respectively. If he adds wind release to it, he can create a wind Rasengan that can actually be thrown, which is not to be confused with the Rasen Shuriken. The wind release Rasengan and the Rasen Shuriken, two different jutsu. Now, his third Rasengan that he can create is the compression Rasengan, which takes the Rasengan, which is already compressing chakra, and Boruto just compresses it even further down into a small ball, which in turn not only does more damage, but if he's willing to injure his arm, he can compress it even further into a super compression Rasengan and dish out an enormous amount of damage as well. And then when Momoshiki takes over, he can actually shoot the compression Rasengan off as a bullet. He can also use the Gale Palm Jutsu to attack from a mid-range distance, and his battle IQ is extremely high, being able to outsmart an elite Jonin like Ao during their battle. Like Sarada by the events of the Versus Momoshiki arc in the Boruto movie novel, his striking power and speed was being compared to a Jonin, and one training session with Boruto was enough for Sasuke to say to himself and think to himself, this kid is going to surpass Naruto one day if he keeps improving at this rate, which the fact that he keeps adding multiple changes in chakra nature to his Rasengan at age 12 and age 13 is absolutely telling. Naruto didn't make multiple changes in chakra nature with his Rasengan until he was 17 and had all the chakra of all 9 Biju when he did so. Minato Namikaze's genes, they're clearly at play here. They clearly skipped a generation because Boruto's the second coming of Minato. Now, as crazy as all this is, we hadn't even talked about Karma, which in its basic form gives Boruto enough of a boost that Naruto needed to brace himself for the attack, and he had to use a Shadow Clone to block the Thunderclap Arrow Jutsu, which led to even Naruto acknowledging the amping power that Boruto got. When Boruto goes into this next stage of Karma, he's drawing on more of Momoshiki's power and has the Byakugan active, but he hasn't shown the ability to actually use it yet. Which, as a reminder, we're only talking Boruto from Boruto Naruto Next Generation, so nothing from Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, which as of this recording has actually come out, so I'm adding this in secondary. We can basically call this stage 2 Karma for Boruto. When Momoshiki takes over and uses the true power of Karma, he's strong enough that when he was fighting against Code with his Karma Seal limiters, the same Code who was just bullying Boruto, Code wasn't able to hold him off, and he was able to hold down a fatigued Sasuke after Sasuke got his Rinnegan destroyed, and upon sensing Sage Mode Naruto coming to help out, he quickly assessed that Code was going to need help in order to beat Naruto, and that he needed to use Code to take down Naruto, but once Naruto was helpless, he may or may not have been able to use the Rasengan that was strong enough to actually kill Naruto. Momoshiki, in control of Boruto, was able to briefly hold his own against Kawaki, who began to tap into Ishiki's true power, but even in that fight, Momoshiki was still outmatched. Then you have Kawaki you have to worry about, who on top of having an entire body that is filled with ninja tech, which allows him to modify his body parts into melee weapons or projectiles, he's also a better version of Jigen when you sit down and think about it. Like Jigen, he can absorb any chakra-based jutsu that isn't infused with pre-existing nature, so fire release that comes out of naturally existing fire, or water release out of naturally existing water, but that's irrelevant. Kawaki can just use his dojutsu to shrink down those very same jutsu. On top of that, he can summon chakra rods and chakra cubes that can negate these sensory abilities of 6-pass Sage Mode Naruto. And unlike Jigen, he can use his power consistently without his body breaking down. Though unlike Jigen, his chakra control is not necessarily the best, so when he starts shrinking himself down and he does it too long and too often, it leads to moments like we had after the Omnipotence was casted, where Kawaki was complaining about his chakra being too low and saying that it consumes a lot of chakra. Then you have to worry about the fact that Kawaki is literally Naruto's student, which means Kawaki knows his Shadow Clone Jutsu in battle, and he's already mastered fire style change in chakra nature, which makes sense given that his father was stated in the anime to be an exceptional shinobi before he lost his mind following the war. Which, for those of you guys who need a refresher, that would be episode 192 of the anime. Based on what we've seen, Kawaki is stronger than Code when Code still has his limiters in place, so essentially Kawaki with the Karma Seal is stronger than red hair Code, but he's weaker than white hair Code. The story makes that pretty much clear. Again, this is part 1 Kawaki, so not the one in part 2. There's an implied statement that Naruto doesn't believe Boruto or Kawaki are stronger to be Code now that his limiters are removed, which means they might be stronger than Jigen, but they're now weaker than Code, which means that just because of how strong these two are, you're going to have to start this fight out at a Jigen plus power level, and due to the sheer volume of people you're going to be fighting with various chakra natures, you're going to need to have all 5 changes in chakra nature, and you're going to have various sealing scrolls that have natural existing water and etc. that can be used for chakra attacks so the karma can't absorb it. But even then, Kawaki's the headache because he can just shrink down all the jutsu. Whoever this magical shinobi is, they've got their hands full in the fight, because while Boruto's generation is top heavy with Boruto and Kawaki, the rest of the members of that generation, they're no slouch, but there are some weaklings in it. However, if you're still convinced that like Boruto's generation is just way too strong and that all the members of Boruto's generation are in this top 15, top 20, you'll want to check out the 15 strongest Boruto character video that you see on the screen here.